All right, everyone. Well, this week we're going to create a crumpled paper effect, almost as if you took a piece of notebook paper, balled it up, and then laid it out flat. That's the ultimate effect we're going for, and we're going to create the sheet of notebook paper all from scratch, and then we're going to pretty much destroy it. So let's begin by obviously creating a new file, and just so you can see what's going on here, I've got a 6x8 at 150 dpi. Now, of course, if you are doing an image for print, you'll want to do it at considerably higher resolution. And I've just started with a standard blue background here, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new blank layer. And I'm going to press Shift-Delete to bring up the fill dialog, and we're going to use white, and we're going to click OK. Now, to create the lines on the paper, we're going to use something that probably nobody ever uses. That is the single row marquee tools. I'm going to start with the single row marquee, and we're going to also use the single column. We're going to start with the single row marquee tool, and inside this layer, we're just going to click right here. It's going to drop in that selected line there. Now, of course, we know that the notebook paper lines are blue, so I'm just going to grab this blue color here, and I'm just going to press Option-Delete. And if I deselect real quick, if I just press Command or Control D, you can see that there's my blue line. But I want to undo that. I want to reselect it, because we're going to do a step and repeat to create all the other lines on the sheet of paper. So with it selected, I'm going to press Option Command T. That would be Alt Control T on a Windows machine to set it up for the step and repeat. I'm just going to hold down my Shift key, and I'm going to do my down arrow just a few times to get a little line there. And once I get it nudged down, I'm going to press Enter. And still keeping it selected, we're going to press Shift Option Command T. That's a lot of keys there. So Shift Option Command T or Shift Alt Control T, and just keep pressing the letter T over and over, and it will just step and repeat that line all the way down our image. Now, if the line is not selected, what you're going to get is a layer for each and every line. You don't really want that. So you just want to make sure it's selected so it all stays on one layer. So the lines of our paper are there. Let's go ahead and create the margin line, which is the single column marquee tool, and let's just drop that right there. Grab this color, pink color here, and just press Option Delete, deselect, and there we have our notebook paper. But what is it missing? It's missing the holes on the side here. So let's just go over here and grab our elliptical marquee, and I'm just going to draw a circle here. I'm holding down my Shift key to constrain the proportions. Let's draw a circle here, position it there. I'm just going to press Delete. You can see the background layer in the background there. So let's just take that same selection, holding the Shift key down, and just drag it down toward the middle. Press Delete again. I'm going to hold the Shift key down, drag the selection down toward the bottom, and press Delete again. So now we've got our holes in our paper, the lines, everything looks good. Well, I'm going to press Command or Control T to bring up free transform. I'm going to hold down the Shift option and just scale this toward the center there. Just like that. Okay. Now what we need to do is apply the texture that's going to make it look like it's all crumpled up. Well, I'm going to go ahead and create a new blank layer above this one, and I'm going to go ahead and set my default colors by pressing the letter D key. We're going to go over here into the filter menu and choose Render Clouds. And there you can see we've got our clouds filter. Now what we're going to do here is something kind of interesting. We want to increase the texture, or make it a little bit rougher texture than just what the clouds are giving us. We're going to use lighting effects for that. So if we go into the channels palette, you can see that because the clouds are in the topmost layer, that's all we're going to see in the channels is right here, is these various channels. We're going to use that to enhance the texture of the clouds filter we've already applied. So with that layer selected, let's go into the filter menu and go to Render Lighting Effects. And here we're going to make sure we've got our lighting set up where it's pretty much right over top. And it's got the light evenly spread over the top there, and you can actually move this around. And all we're going to change in here is down here where it says Texture Channel. Now by default it will be set to none, but we're going to choose, and since the clouds pretty much look the same on every channel, we're just going to go ahead and choose any channel. Let's go ahead and do the blue one. And I'm going to go ahead and leave these settings, the height setting to 50. And I'm going to check on white is high, and when I click OK, watch what happens. You can see how much it's gotten much more texture there. If I undo it, you can see the difference there, and all we did was use that lighting effects filter. Well, now I want to do one thing here is save this particular layer as a displacement map for what we're going to do later. So let's go into the save file to go to save as. I'm just going to save it to the desktop, but let's just give it a name. Let's call it paper displace. You can certainly name it anything you like, just as long as you know where to find it. I'm going to save it to the desktop here as a Photoshop file, but I need it to be a flattened Photoshop file. So I'm just going to uncheck layers, and it will automatically go to save as copy. And basically what that does is it takes it, flattens it, and then saves it as a file without affecting the original file here. So when I click save, there you can see that there's my paper displacement map, but now we're still back in our original layered file. Now, what I want to do now is I'm going to blend this layer with my paper layer there. So first thing I'm going to do is actually clip it inside the paper layer. I'm going to hold down my Option or Alt key and then just click between the layers, and it will clip it inside there. And then all I need to do now is just change the blend mode of this layer. I'm going to change it actually to multiply. Now, it is way too dark for what we're going for right here, so I'm going to take the opacity down considerably, maybe to about 25. Yeah, maybe that's a little too much. Let's do about 50. So it starts to give a little bit of texture, like it's really been balled up and then laid out flat. But notice that the edges and the lines, they're all still straight. It looks like a brand new piece of paper with some texture on it. That's not really working for me. So let's do this. We're going to go in here into the paper layer, and before I apply a filter to it, we're going to turn it into a smart object. So I'm going to Control or right click right on there, and let's choose Convert to Smart Object. And we're going to apply the displacement filter. Now, before we do that, I want to open up this displacement file that we created. And what it's going to do is, you see how rough this texture is. When I apply it as a displacement map, it's really going to break up those lines, and it's going to be all pixelated. Don't necessarily want that. So in order to fix that, I'm going to go into the filter menu and choose blur, and we're going to give it a slight blur. And I think about a 5 pixel blur looks pretty good. Maybe let's go with about a 6 pixel there. I'm going to click OK, and let's just close that and save that file. Now, inside this file, let's go in here and apply it as a displacement map. I'm going to go under Filter to Distort, Displace. Keep these settings relatively low. I'm going to keep the horizontal and vertical scale to around 10. We'll leave these settings as they are. We'll click OK. It tells us to go and find that file, which is right here. And click Open. And now it's roughed up that paper. It's roughed up those edges and the lines in here a little bit to give it a little bit more realism to it. We now need to add one more thing just to make this a little bit more realistic. We're going to add a layer style. So I'm going to double click on this image to open up the layer style menu. We're going to activate Bevel and Emboss, and we're also going to activate the texture here. And what it does is it kind of gives it a bump map. It gives it a bit, texture, like it's got some depth in there. But what we want to do is add a texture in here. Now it's already showing up in here, but what we want to do, I'm just going to go ahead and reset my patterns here just so you can see, because the pattern we're going to use isn't immediately available. When you open up your patterns, you see these default patterns here. What you need to do is go into the flyout menu and choose this setting right here, Patterns. It's a set of preset patterns that are built in. I'm just going to append it to the list here. I'm going to drag down. You want to choose this one right here, and if you just hover over the name, you can see it's called Zebra. So we'll choose that, and you notice it applies it to the paper. But we need to change some things first here. I'm going to take the scale all the way up to 1,000. The depth I'm going to increase to about 175. Notice what it's doing. It's giving me a little bit of texture there. You can increase that depth if you want, just to give it a little bit more, but don't want to give it too much. It'll almost look unrealistic. I'm going to keep mine about 225. Now the beauty is here, it's applying that texture as a layer style. So if you move the window out of the way, you can go in here and actually physically move it around and determine exactly what you can almost pretty much line up the bump map or the texture with the distortion of your paper. So if you want to have that little crease there, like it's bending over there and everything, so that looks pretty good, I think. Click OK. So there we have crumpled up, balled up paper, and it's kind of laying it out flat. Well, I forgot to add one last thing while we were in that layer style. Let's open it up and add got to add a drop shadow, of course. Let's increase that distance and the size a little bit. Click OK, and there we have it. Now, what's this paper missing? Well, of course, it's missing some writing on there, and that's why we created it as a smart object. If I double-click on this file, notice it opens it up, and it's the original piece of notebook paper we created. So I could just take my pen here, and let's just write something on here. Meet. Actually, no, let's create a new layer. And we'll just write something on here. Meet me for lunch. And when I click and close this and save that document, it applies that distortion. It takes on that distortion that I've written on there, and everything looks good. And the beauty is I can go back into that smart object, delete that layer, erase it, do whatever I want, change it. So I have all the freedom to do all kinds of cool stuff. So there you are, taking that crumpled up paper effect a little bit further and having a little bit more fun with it. So try it yourself, have fun, and we'll see you next time.